Hi, besties and bosses. Happy Tuesday. How are you doing? I feel like I've always got my stuff set up in a funky way. We're good now. I'm so excited to hang with y'all today. I've got so much we're gonna dive into. I've got a fun announcement that I'm like giddy excited, which is very fun because I'm always excited about my work and business, but I haven't had a new offer to share with y'all in a while. So I'm very excited to share that with you, and I'll be sharing that with you very soon. We have a free masterclass coming up this month that I'm gonna share with you, and then we've got a lot I wanna dive into in today's live. We're gonna talk about the 4 buying personas, what you need to know about them so that you can stay out of your own way, not sabotage your sales process, and sell more. Hey, Lilith, nice to have you here. Let me start first with the announcement. I sometimes share those things for the end, but I think I'm really kind of too excited to wait till the end. So we're going to share that first, and then we will go into all of the content today. So if you are new to my world, what you probably don't know is I am a one-on-one coach. I've been booked out for years. I've been in business for 6.5 years, and I only offer one-on-one very intentionally. I do not offer anything else. I really believe in one-on-one coaching. That is my zone of genius. And for what I help clients with, I support them to build, grow, and scale profitable businesses. That's really where I believe I can impart the most support to really help my clients get the results that they do. My clients get epic results. So I don't offer, we have some courses, but I have a sales course that is $99. It's basically free. We used to offer it for free. Really, what I sell is one-on-one, meaning I have not offered anything new to y'all literally in years. We had a 2-on-1 coaching program that I tested. It was probably 4 years ago at this point. Sell Out Without Feeling Like a Sellout, which is my sales course that is basically free. It's $99. We offered that for free for 2 years. So I guess that was technically a free offer, but even that was 2 or 3 years ago. I have a private mastermind, which is still all one-on-one based with some calls. That's for ongoing clients who have been with me for over a year. So I haven't had anything new to offer you in so long outside of when a coaching spot opens up. So I'm super excited because there has been an offer that I have been sitting on for probably years at this point, but COVID and some details I need to have in place needed to get confirmed. And I just had confirmation about 2 weeks ago that the final piece I needed so I can offer to you is here. And Lila says, I'm going to read this. Lila says, I'm going to pause this for a second. She says, I want to share a huge win with you. I got my first client. The shift from the money blocks into gold really make a huge impact. Oh my gosh, Lila, I am celebrating you. Nothing makes me happier, like F my announcement for a second. That makes me so happy. Thank you for sharing that. It also makes me so happy when I know, like that content helps someone, and just thank you for sharing that. So celebrating you, so seeing you in that first client is the biggest win ever. Like I hope and encourage you to celebrate the actual like crapola out of that. Thank you for sharing with us. So proud of you. And kind of, I know I'm doing a little ping-ponging here and pivoting, but I wanted to make sure because that's such a big deal, y'all. Coming kind of back to the offer, I'm sharing with you all. This is why I get so excited. And this is also why I don't offer anything else, because I want to be able to give that content and value for free. And I've always wanted to be able to offer you an in-person VIP day, but not just an in-person VIP day that is kind of like, oh, we meet at a restaurant or we get an Airbnb. I've always wanted to host a VIP day at Soho House. If you don't know what Soho House is, I will drop lots of pictures, but it is a members only club for creatives. I first went to it when I lived in Los Angeles, when I was acting, when I worked in advertising. I used to go to the Soho House here, and the spaces are really beautifully curated. It is filled with creatives who are working, so people who are in the creative space. If you're a business owner, I consider you to be a creative. Whether or not you're painting, you are creative and you are a creative thinker. If you are making something out of nothing, that is what you do as a business owner. And I really find for us as creatives and as business owners, the power of one-on-one coaching to me is where it's at. I will stand by that. I think it is where the transformative magic for all of us as humans is, in and out of but in and out of business. And I think there's also something really powerful when you're in a beautiful space, in beautiful surroundings, in something that feels really luxury, kind of quality, elevated, expansive. And all of the Soho houses are really beautiful spaces that have been decorated with decor, interior design that really is pleasing to a creative's mind. When you're in those sorts of spaces and you're around like-minded people and other people who are creative and in that kind of energy and hub, I find it's just and you're doing that in a collaborative process with someone, I feel like that is just rocket fuel magic for catapulting, for kind of elevating that transformative possibility and magic out of a coaching container. So I love one-on-one. I love the ongoing relationship. That'll always be my love, but I've always wanted to be able to have this as something to offer you. But Soho House is members only. There's a waiting list of 60,000 people. There's a whole bunch of hoops you have to jump through to join. And this was the way I wanted to offer this to you, because I wanted to have that component. It was really important for me, along with the coaching aspect, because of what I think that experience will do to help. I mean, just even like money mindset, right? Like being able to step in and to embody being someone who is successful and in that space when we're doing the work, to me feels very important. So I applied. 60,000 applications. We are through. We have been accepted. We have joined Soho House. We have put our fee down. I am paid up. We are ready to go, which means I get to offer you a VIP coaching weekend, which means these are gonna be very limited because I have a life and we only have a few weekends that will be available. I will offer up one per month, September, October, November. It might be a little soon for September. This is in New York City at the Dumbo House location. So that's in Dumbo in Brooklyn, which means you're in a beautiful location, literally looking over the river to the Manhattan skyline. And we will meet in the morning. We'll spend 3 hours deep diving into your business. We will look at the overall strategy, whether you are building, growing, and scaling, getting really clear on that from a marketing or sales perspective. It might be looking at your offer to scale or your offer to build your business. We will pause and have a beautiful lunch, and we will look out at the city. Maybe we'll go sit outside by the pool. We'll have a really lovely lunch. Then we'll continue with another 3 hours of coaching, where we'll continue with that strategy that sets you up, along with any mindset pieces that come up. Because I'll be sitting there side by side with you, if we need to, we can also look at like content and copy together. Then I will send you off for the evening, and in the morning we'll meet for brunch to close things out. There's a really beautiful, if the weather is nice, beautiful outdoor deck where we can, again, eat really great food. If you want to have a morning cocktail, I won't judge you. We can just have brunch and enjoy to close out the container. Or if you have any questions, if after the evening you've kind of had some time to marinate and process and some things have come up, we'll be able to have that brunch time to really get clarity on that and close out the container. So no, I'm giving you all the details here, but I want to share this with you really completely so you can understand what's included. And I'm like level 10 excited for this. So if this is something you're like, oh my gosh, I would love to do this, and I would love to do this in New York City, and nothing feels better than getting the coaching and some of that like luxury fun element of it, hit me up. I will put a discovery call link. We'll have a discovery call for this because it's very important to me. Whoever does this with me is really clear this is the right fit for them, and we're really clear on the focus for that VIP weekend. I want us to know what we're focused on and working on, so you're very clear on the outcome of that weekend and our work together. And if it's sort of like, oh, I'm not sure if it's that, but maybe it is the 6-month coaching or a virtual coaching intensive. I have a much shorter coaching virtual intensive. We can chat about that as well. So if you book a discovery call, it does not mean that you are locked into doing the VIP weekend, but that will now be on offer for you. And essentially that means we have 3 max available till the end of the year. I will not do any in December because it's a shorter month. And then we'll see what the new year looks like. And we can be pretty flexible with the weekends, but I am limiting it at that because, you know, I gotta have some time on the weekends for myself as well. Lilith says, ooh, that sounds freaking amazing. Thank you for sharing that excitement with me. I think it's going to be all one-on-one. To me is amazing, but I think it's going to be so nice to get that extended deep dive time together in the beautiful space. So I will make sure I drop some photos of this. This is something that has been percolating in my brain probably for 2 or 3 years. I think I've been manifesting this membership for that long, but because I just got that acceptance letter and just joined, we don't even have a sales page for this yet. So we will have proper sales page and some promos that go out for you in the next couple of weeks, but I wanted to share this with y'all early so that you could be the first to know, so that if someone here is interested, because they are so limited, I would encourage you to book that discovery call sooner rather than later so we can get you scheduled and get all those details sorted out for you. Hey, Jessica, sometimes it tells me, oh, Jessica says very, very cool. Thank you. All right, thank you all for sharing. I know we have a whole live stream topic, but again, I have not had a new offer in so long, so I'm also like, all of you know when you come up with a new offer, when you have a new offer, it's just like, it is a part of our like world and our baby, and I love nothing more than getting to support y'all. So this just feels like a super yummy way to get to do that. So I will drop that link after our live stream, and now let's pivot to our conversation. At the end of our live stream today, we do have a free masterclass at the end of the month, question all the rules for making money so you can make bank on your terms, or your way, I think is the actual title. I'll drop a link for that and I'll share more about that at the end of the live stream, but I want to dive into our material since we did spend a good chunk of time talking first about the VIP weekend. So let's shift gears now and let's talk about buyer personalities. This is, I don't know if this is a real term or if it's a term I came up with, but it's a very important concept. And it's an important concept because for a couple of reasons. I want us to understand this from a marketing and sales perspective so you can understand the different buyer personalities, the different ways people make decisions when it comes to making investments in business, so that it's easier for you with your marketing and sales process to know what to speak to. And I also want to speak to a really important mindset aspect to this, and a place that I support my clients to unwind themselves a lot, where they can unintentionally sabotage their sales and push away clients. And so I want to speak to both of those today, and ideally give you some tools or some insight into how you can navigate these different personalities. Because the truth is, all of us, when we're thinking about investing or buying something, whether it is, I don't know, like a mug or a glass, something that's relatively inexpensive, or a high ticket coaching offer, a VIP coaching weekend, like we were just talking about, we all have a decision-making process we go through before we buy, before we invest. And we tend to have different personalities, different personas, different ways we make those decisions. And what I would say, this is sort of like anyone who's ever done any, the love languages, if anyone knows the love languages, you know how there's the 4 love languages. Most of us have kind of a predominant, like 1 or 2 love languages. And then, we have a little bit of the others. We're always a little bit of a combination of all of those. What I would say with the buyer personas that we're going to unpack today, we probably all have a little bit of all of these personas in us, and depending on what we're buying, whether it's something like a glass or something more expensive, or that's going to ask more of us to show up and commit to, we might, vary like on which buyer personality decision-making process we use. And most of us have one or two we tend to lean into more often than another. So I think that's just helpful for a little bit of context. And I will explain all 4 of those and kind of like the pros and cons and how you can use those. But just to give you an example here, I'm sure some of you watching this now or on the replay know that you're the kind of person who hears about the VIP coaching weekend, right? And you're like, that is for me, that is right. I don't even need to know anything else. Let me book that call. I am ready. I'm going to have the call. I'll be ready to go. Kind of doesn't gut instinct. I can make this quick decision. That's mine. I'm going to invest. I'm going to do that thing, right? There's some of us who make decisions that way. And then there's some of us who might hear something like that. We're like, oh, this sounds really interesting, but I need to think about this for a while. And I need to do some research on this. And I need to maybe see what else is out there. And that's the way you're going to think about it. And then maybe in a month from now, you'll book a call. Or when I tell you that there's only 1 spot left, if you want that, you might be like, oh, okay, now I'm going to book that call. And that's the way you might go through your process for making a decision to decide to make an investment and to join me for a weekend like that, or in my 6-month coaching program, right? And we can just see those are just simply 2 different ways we process information and make decisions. And one is not better than the other. One does not make a better client than the other. Both have pros and cons. Both have trade-offs. They're simply different buyer personas, buyer personalities, different ways we intake information and process and create enough safety in our system to be able to make that investment, to make that decision, right? And a larger decision, like spending a weekend with someone that's going to be at a higher price point versus maybe buying even a bottle of water that's going to go in here, right, is going to probably ask you to lean into a different one of those decision-making processes. So I want to lay the groundwork there. So we're just seeing one is not better than the other. This is not, you need to know the best buyer personality for the best client, and this is the way you never have an objection. This is the way everyone always says yes to you. I don't know, whatever kind of nonsense. Or this is the buyer personality you should have so that you can be the best client ever and never feel discomfort ever again in your life. That is not what this conversation is about at all today. All are great and all are simply different. However, what we can see is what I just described there. Those are 2 very different buyer personalities, 2 very different decision-making processes. And I'm actually going to start with the mindset side of this before we unpack the the 4 different personalities, buyer personas, and kind of the pros and cons and how you can use those, because I think this mindset component, if you hear nothing else from today's live stream, is probably the most valuable. What you can imagine and what I see happen so often is, let's say you are the person who you are like, I hear something, I want that, I feel a gut pull, and I make a decision, and I trust myself to invest, and I kind of just like this, I can just do that thing, right? If that's the way you process decisions and you make investment decisions, and then you have a sales conversation with someone who's maybe on the other side of the spectrum where they need a lot of time to think about it, and they need to weigh their options, and they need to research, and they need a lot of follow-up, and they need to see what else is out there, and they need to think about it. We can see how those are in complete contrast, and we can see how it'd be very easy to create a story if you're the person who makes a quick decision based on your gut instinct, and someone else is showing up with something very different, to project your decision-making process, your buyer persona, onto a potential client and decide, oh, they don't want this. They don't like this. They're not going to be a client. They're not going to be a good client. They don't think I'm good enough. They're researching because they think there's something better out there, right? It's very easy to start, again, projecting your persona onto someone else, your decision-making process onto someone else, and to start to create a lot of stories that may or may not be true, and to unintentionally sabotage a really great client relationship in the process. I have one client, this is actually an example from one of my clients, who she really believes in coaching, and she really believes in investing at a high level and stretching herself that way to pull herself to the next level and the value of coaching. And she is someone who, she makes a decision in advance, right? When our coaching agreement's coming to a close, like, she's already decided 3 months before she's renewing. That's kind of her buyer persona and the way she makes and processes those decisions. And something we've had to work on is exactly this, is when someone shows up on a call and they don't know instantaneously and they need to think about it or they need to research. There was a while that was feeling really sticky, and her brain was kind of assuming everyone made decisions the way she did, which is super normal. That's what our brains do, right? Our brains like to make those shortcuts, they like to make those leaps, but it was causing her to really get in her head and to feel rejected, or to feel like this was going to be a horrible client, or that they didn't like her, or that they weren't going to hire her, or that she shouldn't follow up, or there was no point in following up, right? It was creating a lot of stickiness in her sales process, not because there was anything wrong with her offer, not because she doesn't know how to sell, not because her sales process wasn't great, but simply because the person on the other side of the Zoom line had a different buyer persona decision-making process than her, and her brain was reading that as, because this is different and because I make decisions this way, this means they're not going to decide to be yes. This means there's something wrong here. And what we really had to work on is seeing they simply have a different buyer persona and decision-making process. How can we make your process right, but also make their process right and meet them where they're at to support them through the decision-making process? What I talk about with my clients so often, we talk about it so often here, is how can we keep empowering the person in front of us to make that clear decision? And I find in sales conversations, in coaching, so much of our world, right? When we're on the potential client side, when we're on the client side, so often what is happening when we're feeling unsure, when we're in a decision-making process, is this tendency to subconsciously, to not, I don't think anyone knows they're doing this, but to sort of like want to hand our power over to someone else and to say, can you make this decision for me? Can you tell me what's right for me? Can you tell me what the secret is? Can you tell me what the right thing is, right? Like, there's a lot of that like power transference. And I think when we're in this dynamic where we have 2 different buyer personas and we're not aware that that's what's going on, we can almost lose sight of our job on the sales side. Even if you're not a coach, if you're selling, I really believe our job, if we're selling from a place of service, is to empower the person in front of us to make a clear decision to move towards what it is they want, right? Which means they have to get clear on what they want and then to move towards that. But if we're projecting onto our client and we're projecting our decision-making process, what we're unintentionally doing is also taking away someone's power, right? Or we're allowing someone to give their power to us if their decision-making process maybe isn't that quick, instinctual kind of gut decision-making process. And so I think it's just really helpful to see this so you can tease it apart and see, first and foremost, if this is happening. This is a great place to check yourself and to simply see, wait a second, what's really going on here? Is this someone who hates my work or doesn't want to work with me or that I shouldn't follow up with? Or am I simply projecting how I like to make a decision onto someone else and there's something different happening here? And so my brain is seeing that as they don't like this. Can I separate those two things out and allow the person in front of me to just have the process they have? And with that, I think what can also be helpful is just to keep coming back to that frame of my job in a sales conversation is to keep giving the power back to the person in front of me and keep allowing them to get clear on what they want and to make that decision. Where our job is to simply support them in getting clear on what's the right fit for them, what they want, and to make that decision. Is this tracking? Is this making sense? We know if that part isn't making sense, but I think this is a place where, gosh, I would say so many of my clients have had to do work around this from different places because it's just, again, just such an easy mindset loop trap to fall into because, again, our brains just love to project. That is just what our brains do. And that's how our brains often make sense of the world. And it can just be very, very helpful to keep noticing what is yours and what is theirs, the person in front of you. How can you take back what's yours and make that right? But how can you give potential clients back what's theirs and make that right as well? Lilith says, yes, definitely makes sense. Thank you for saying that. So that is what I would say in terms of, and we'll go into those 4 personas a little bit, but I would say that's the sticky place with this, and this is the place I can see people get in their own way. And this isn't a place to make yourself wrong. This isn't a place where it's like, now you need to go do a lot of work around this. What I would say here is simply having this awareness and being able to check yourself here can do wonders, and to keep checking in with, wait a second, is there actually a problem here? Is there actually someone who's not interested here? Is there actually someone who doesn't want to buy here? Is this really a place I shouldn't follow up? Or is this simply my brain doing a thing and projecting? The note I made on my notes for y'all, I can't say words today, is when you project, you end up deciding for someone taking their power away. That's the way I like to think about it. So again, projecting this is what our brains do, but if you can start to notice and to simply stop projecting by doing that, you're also giving someone back their power. Because again, when we're projecting on someone, we're essentially deciding for them, right? If I use my client as the example, if I pretend I'm her and I have the quick decision-making process and someone else needs to do a little bit more research, but I think I project my form of making decisions, my buyer persona, on someone else, and I decide then because they're not making that instantaneous decision, they don't want this and it's wrong, and so I'm not going to follow up with them. I'm not going to make the offer. I'm not going to talk about the objections, right? I'm not going to lean into that conversation. What I've simply done here is decided for them that they don't get to have this, right? I've just decided they're a no when they could have easily been a yes and taken their power away unintentionally. I don't think any of us ever do that intentionally, but I frame it this way intentionally for you because I think none of us want to take anyone's power away. And when we can start to see how this does decide for someone and take their power away, I think it can feel a lot less sticky and a lot better in your system when you can see, well, if I simply allow them to have the process they do and allow them to decide, I'm also then giving them back their power. Okay, you get what I'm seeing here. I have other examples, but let's go into, we can always come back to that if that's not feeling clear, because I think what we want to go into is, I have a lot I want to say on these 4 different buyer personas. I will put a note here just kind of on that sabotage piece, is again, just simply noticing where someone isn't saying no to you in the sales process, but your brain is hearing no simply because they have a different buying persona decision-making process than you. That is the place to be mindful of. That is the place to be sticky. So again, it's simply noticing where your brain wants to hear no, or your brain wants to hear yes, right? Either way, when that is not what's being said, when basically your hearing has been turned off because you are assuming someone makes decisions the same way you do. And that's where we just want to stop assuming. You know what they say about assuming? Makes an ass out of you and me, right? And just put our listening back on. Just see if we can be curious, open, and listen instead. Okay, so let's talk about these buying personas. Again, this is not like a business term I've heard anywhere. This is what we're calling it here. But essentially, these are 4 core ways I see people making their buying and investing decisions. I'm sure there are other ways, but I find most of them fall into these 4. I want to outline these for you. I want to go through some of the pros and cons because I think, again, we want to see how the one is not better than the other. They all, like everything in life, there's a shadow side and there's a light side. I just want us to see both of those, and then we'll talk through how you can, if this is someone's buyer persona decision-making process, I think there are some strategic ways you can support someone to make that decision, to give them back their power. And so we'll just talk through some of those so you have a little bit of that strategy in your back pocket. Okay, so the first one is literally what we were just talking about. And y'all, you can like play a drinking game. Every time I say the word literally, you can like take a drink or like leave me an emoji. I don't know what it is. Does anyone ever have this where like a word gets into your brain and you find you say it 20 times a day? I cannot stop saying that word, and I don't know why. It's been ever since this weekend, and my husband and I have been laughing about it. So literally, I keep saying the word literally. And what I was going to say here, just laughing at myself, the first buyer persona decision-making process is what we were speaking about in that client example I shared. Lila said yes. Oh my God, LOL. It's so funny how it happens. And the more you think about it, I mean, this is mindset 101, right? The more you keep saying it. And so you can't tell yourself not to say it because then your brain just hears say it and you'll say it more and more. Anyway, I digress. But the first buyer persona, the first decision-making process is what we were speaking about in that client example that I was sharing, which is someone who makes their buying, investing decisions based on a gut feeling, based on a gut reaction. All of us, again, have a little bit of all of these decision-making processes, and most of us will probably have one that's more predominant or one or two depending on the kind of thing we're making an investing, buying decision around. I'll share, I probably fall into the making that kind of gut feeling, like a sensory-based decision-making process. That's probably my predominant way that I make decisions. I find a lot of people who are feeling, and I say feeling in terms of we're sensitive. We identify with being feelers. People who are really big on intuition will often fall into this category. So this is someone who's like, I just have a feeling. I don't need to know anything else. I just have a gut feeling. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to invest in this. This is, I think it can be on a pro side, really positive, because usually this is when we're really in our trust. We really do trust our intuition. We really do trust that gut instinct. I think this can be oftentimes really beneficial. One of the pro sides is because it can often allow you to make quicker decisions. And I think as business owners, being able to make quick decisions that you trust and being able to trust your intuition is an asset for you, right? Getting stuck looping around a decision for months and months and months can often stall us and be a sign of perfectionism or be a sign of fear. So I think there's a lot here, and that there's a lot of self-trust in this form of decision making. That is really beautiful. And like we were talking about, all of these have a pro, and then they have a little bit of a shadow side. And I think one of the shadow sides to being someone who is more of that feeler, gut-based decision maker. I don't have sexy names for these. We could come up with some sexy names, but someone who is making decisions from that way, I think sometimes then we can also misunderstand intuition for excitement, for reasons we make impulsive decisions that aren't actually based on intuition. And we can use intuition or our gut as a reason or as an excuse to sometimes make impulsive decisions. I've absolutely done that before. I think this form, kind of the other shadow side of this form of decision making, can also sometimes lead to, because we're such feelers, because we're such quick decision makers, sometimes you make rash, impulsive, quick decisions that you later come to regret, that you kind of have that like buyer's remorse. And so I think sometimes there can be a little bit more of a potential for buyer's remorse with this form of decision making. Now, there's trade-offs, there's benefits, there's pros, cons, there's tons of pros to this. I think it's just helpful for us, if we are someone who makes a decision this way, to understand, oh, well, these are just the shadow sides. I just need to be mindful and check in with, am I actually making a decision based on intuition, or am I being impulsive, and just understanding that difference. And I think the more you make decisions, the more you start to understand the difference. And I think the other thing, if this is a way you make decisions, what I do, because I know this is how I make decisions, I like to just give myself sort of a built built-in slowdown period where usually I will have made the decision, I know my decision, but I just bake in a slowdown period where I'm not going to actually give the credit card, sign the contract, move across the country to New York City like I did, right? I had made that decision pretty instantaneously, and I gave myself a 2-week slowdown period before making any big moves because I just know this about myself, and that's where I can just make sure 2 weeks later or 24 hours later that decision still holds true. And that's kind of how I like to play with that there. So that's, if this is how you make decisions, I think just a little place you can kind of give yourself that check-in for, especially, you don't have to do that if you're buying a bottle of water, but maybe if you're having a big investment. On the sales side of things, I think if you notice someone makes decisions in this way, I think it's really interesting. I think there's almost a way in which we can be like, well, great. Isn't it great if someone can like make a gut instinct decision, like no on the phone, be a yes on the phone, they're like all in. I think in many ways for most of us as business owners, that's sort of like the dream, right? It's like, that's an easy yes, that's what we want, that's what we're affirming. And I would say yes, and I think that's very true. And because we know the shadow side to this form of decision-making, this buyer persona, something I like to check in with, knowing that my investments are long-term, right? Even if we're doing a VIP weekend and it's one weekend, we're one-on-one for the whole week. Like, you're spending a lot of time with me. Even if it's a coaching intensive, it's a long coaching intensive. If you're working with me, most of my clients renew and work with me long-term. 90% of my clients do. So even if you're signing up for a 6-month coaching program, that on its own is a long-term investment, but you could be working with me for 3 years. So if I know the shadow side is, oh, this sort of buyer persona tends to sometimes be impulsive instead of instinctual. Sometimes they don't think through all the details. Sometimes it's just so based on feeling and we almost like miss some of the other details. And I know that is a shadow side to things. Sometimes if I get the sense that someone's almost like rushing through the decision, I will really intentionally create that slow down period for them. So sort of like I was saying, if this is your buyer persona, you might want to bake in a little slow your roll period just to sort of test your yes. I'll do the same thing in a sales conversation. So this is a tool that to give credit where credit is due. One of my clients laughs at me because I always say to give credit where credit is due, but I'm very big on making sure we give appropriate credit to people's ideas. Rich Litvin, who's a coach whose work I really respect, he talks about testing the yes. And I think we've probably talked about this in some live stream before. I think this is a really great sales strategy anyway, but I think particularly for a buyer persona who is a little bit more of that feeler, who is a little bit more of that instinctual like gut yes, I think testing the yes can be a really great tool. Testing the yes is essentially what I was talking about in terms of slowing your roll and kind of baking in that slowdown period. It's when someone is sort of like hot and heavy and they're a feeler and they're just like a yes, you can just test the yes. And the way Rich Litvin describes it is more sort of like, okay, I know you're excited, but like, let's just slow this down for a moment. And you can literally use those words, let's just slow that down for a moment. And you can just bake in some time to test the yes, to ask them a couple questions if you need to confirm that this really is a fit, that this really is something that's going to make sense for them long term and not just this impulsive, like this feels so great in the moment because I'm super excited kind of a yes. The other thing you can do, and this is something I'll do a lot with a client like this, is I will not receive credit card payment over a call. I've had people try, I refuse it, I will not allow it. And the reason for it is exactly what we're talking about here. I always want to test the yes, in that I want to know anyone I work with the type of work I'm doing, right? I'm not selling glassware or bottles of water. I'm selling deep, transformative work where we're going to be in this for a long term. I don't want someone who feels like they got tricked into a yes or got super hot, like excited and like energized and like was buying from a feeling yes place that then has buyer's remorse 24 hours later. I want to test the yes, and I sincerely believe if you're a yes on our call, if you're a true yes, you're still going to be a yes if I send you an email with the details and you pay later today or you pay tomorrow, right? But I want to test the yes by just creating even a tiny window of spaciousness so that someone isn't feeling either that pressure or that excitement to make a decision on the spot and to pay on the spot that I think can cause some of the buyer's remorse or be that impulse yes, not the instinct yes that we were talking about. And so I think overall this can be a great sales strategy, but I think particularly if you're speaking to someone who is more of that like feeler decision maker, 24 hours can be a way to test the yes. 20 minutes after the call, so you have time to send the follow-up email and send things over, just creating a little bit of that spaciousness and just thinking through, is this a place I want to test the yes? And I know this sounds so, I think, so backwards to so many people, because it's sort of like, no, I just want to get a yes. I just want to make sales. I just want to make money. But I think if you're here, you are service driven and you are someone who's based in integrity, and you want to work with people who are the right fit, and you want to work with people who are a true yes, not a pressurized or guilt driven or impulsive yes, whatever it is you're selling. And so I think this is then a tool that can, particularly if you're doing high ticket or work that is like coaching or therapy, that is going to be a little bit more involved one-on-one. I think if you're selling a course, for example, you can still test the yes, and there's ways to do that. But I think this is probably going to be more relevant for those of you who are more service-based one-on-one work. But you could definitely do this for, I have a client who does retreats, and we've talked about, even with a retreat, it's not one-on-one work, but how to test the yes, because she was finding herself in a place when she started working, or when we had our conversation about this, where she was, people were saying yes very instinctually, and then they were backing out before the retreat date, which is a really big problem if you have a retreat and a limited number of people. And so we were just looking at where are the places we can test the yes, so that it's a really secure yes, and that makes it more likely people are going to stick around. So it's really great for the back end of your sales process, the retention as well. Lila says exactly. So it's coming from expansion and not from lack. Exactly. Okay. Do I want to say anything else about this one? Testing yes was the main piece there. Okay, let's talk about the next one here. So this next buyer Lila says, or urgency or scarcity, it's much more aligned when it's correct versus not. Exactly. And I think that's the thing with the kind of feeler decision-making process. It's sometimes hard to tell, right? Urgency, scarcity versus alignment, and this is what's right, and I'm super excited and I trust my intuition and gut. They can seem very similar on the front, and sometimes if we're not as in tune with our intuition, they can feel very similar in our body. And I think the longer you are paying attention to and in tune with your alignment and your intuition, the more you can tell that difference. I think at this point I'm pretty in tune with that, and even with that, I still test my own yes and bake that time in. Not question my yes, right? I don't like question like, oh, am I not really saying yes? It's more just I'm just building in that spaciousness to see is that still a yes 24 hours later or a couple weeks later. So exactly to what you're saying. I love this. Okay, so the next buyer persona that I see is really common here. And this is in complete contrast to the feeler, to the person who makes that decision based on their gut feelings and their intuition. And I want you to see the contrast, because you can see how if you just expect everyone to be making decisions based on their instincts, and then you have someone show up in this persona, how that could be so confusing. And that is, I'm calling this the researchers. But these are people who, when they make a decision, really want to research. They want to see all the options, or they want to know everything about you and your program, and they maybe have a lot of questions, or they want to know all the details, or they want to spend a lot of time consuming your content. Right? This is someone who wants to research. They do their due diligence to make a buying decision. Now, what's really interesting is this is sort of like the far opposite of the intuitive buyer persona. And this is also, I would say, my second. I am predominantly an intuitive, and I would say when I'm not intuitive, I'm a researcher, which cracks me up because I feel like they're so vastly different, and yet that depending on what I'm making a decision around, I kind of can vacillate between those two. So I reflect that to you just so you can see. You might have more than one of these, just like people who are clients of yours, depending on what season of life they're in or what offer they're considering of yours, might vacillate between these. So we're always wanting to pay attention for what is someone showing up with, how are they making a decision, not just sort of like blanketly labeling people where it's like, you're the feeler, you're the researcher. We're all a little bit of all of these. But the researcher, I think it's just helpful to see because their decision-making process is going to be so different from that intuitive, that feeler, right? They might be the person who has been watching your content for 6 months versus the person who landed on your post yesterday, read it, clicked with it, got an intuitive hit, knew that you were what they were looking for, booked the call and hired you, right? And one is not better than the other. One is not right or wrong. They're just simply two different ways of processing information and making a decision. Can we see that there? However, we want to approach them a little bit differently, right? If we're expecting everyone just to land on a post and have that feeler decision-making process, we miss out on all the beautiful researchers. Or if we expect everyone to be a researcher and don't trust those feelers because it's sort of like, wait, you're supposed to research, you're supposed to ask me all these questions, I don't trust you, right? Either way, we're just going to sabotage the process. So the researcher, I think I would think about it as they really just want to weigh out their options. They really want to know that they're making the right and best decision. They're usually very thoughtful, they're very methodical. And again, they usually like to just see either all of the options or to know as much information before making that decision. And the way I think about this sort of decision-making process is just seeing that information is what helps them to feel safe to make a decision. Sort of like the feeler feels safe based on that gut instinct, right? That's their safety. Here, the safety is more in that information that helps them make the decision. So the pro is here for someone who's a researcher, often when they make a clear decision, they feel really confident in it. I have a couple clients like this who, we must have had so much back and forth before they invested in coaching, and they had a ton of questions and they had a lot they wanted to know because they were a researcher. And I reflect that to you because, again, just imagine if I'm usually the intuitive, how easy it would be for me to think, oh my God, they're questioning my coaching. They think there's something wrong with me, as opposed to just me knowing, they're just a researcher. This is the way they make decisions. They need to get and extract as much information here as possible to feel really confident and safe in their decision. And once they make a decision, I would say it's sort of like they are so locked and clear that that's their thing. Usually, whereas with the feelers, right, it might feel good to us to like get that instant yes, but there's maybe more of a chance of buyer's remorse. I would say with a researcher, usually it's sort of like they just know. And then once they've got that information they need, that's sort of like they've already tested the yes through their research. So I think that's a really beautiful pro for the researcher, and just pro for you to see if you're working through a sales process, supporting someone through a decision-making process, and they are that researcher. They're asking you a ton of questions, or they're saying they want to go have a call with a bunch of other people. I think just seeing, instead of making that wrong, seeing, how can I support them in this process, and see if they're that yes, that's also going to be a very solid tested yes. Now, I think with that, the sort of shadow side to the researcher for the researcher is, unlike the more of the feeler decision making, this is someone who can get stuck in decision fatigue. This is someone who can get really looped around the perfectionism and the overthinking for a decision, because essentially that research, that information, again, we're seeing that's kind of what gives them the safety and clarity for them to feel like it is safe for me this is the right decision, right? They're looking for the right best decision, but sometimes that can go into the shadow side where they're looking for the perfect decision. They're looking for all the information, and we know there's no such thing as perfect. We know there's no such thing as, it's more like what's right for you in this right time. And so I think just knowing that this is someone who can then also stay in indecision, right? You can research forever and ever and ever. You can use this as a procrastination tool and as a way to keep kicking the can down the road. And so can someone who's in that buying, making journey with you, sales process. Lila says, I'm usually an immediate yes, followed by my researching as my own slowdown, and I still wait about a week to actually say yes to make sure it's something I really want, or if I was just too far in the urgency of it. That's exactly what we were talking about with the testing the yes. These categories are very helpful. It's already soothing my mind about realizing how different someone can be to my own decision process, and helpful to stay out of the self-doubt spiral. It's exactly that. That is you hit the nail on the head of kind of the whole takeaway for today's live stream, is just to see everyone's a little bit different with their process. They're all okay. It's helpful to know what our process is so we can see, oh, this is how I make a decision. I can trust that. And also, this is when I'm sort of being unhealthy in my decision-making process, right? And to be able to support our own selves through that, but also, again, exactly what you're seeing, to see how different someone else can be so we don't get into those self-doubt spirals. Because that self-doubt spiral is then when we project, we make a decision for someone, we stop supporting someone through their process. So I love that reflection. Thank you. So with the researchers, I think a couple of things, if you find someone who's in this, I think first and foremost is knowing that's what's happening instead of thinking, oh my God, they don't want this, or why are they asking me that question? Because what I find happens when clients will bring this to me on a call or into Basecamp, their brains will often hear, oh my gosh, they're questioning me. And their immediate reaction is to want to be very defensive or to want to get into that proving energy. And so I think it's helpful to see if someone is a researcher and that's how they make their decision-making process, they're not questioning you. They're not asking you to prove yourself. They're fact-finding. They're looking for information, right? They're kind of what Lilith was saying, what she uses as her slowdown process. Sometimes they're looking for a confirmation bias, right? Oftentimes when I'm researching, it's actually interesting. Sometimes I just like to see like the lay of the land, but really I think it's just that I'm actually an intuitive feeler buyer persona, and I use my research not to delay the decision-making process, but it's more to confirm my own bias, right? I sort of am like researching, knowing what I want the outcome to already be. Does anyone else do that? It's sort of like even when I'm like shopping for, I don't know, shoes, I already know the shoes I want in my brain, and I'm just researching to confirm that there's nothing, like just to keep confirming, like, oh yeah, I don't like all that other crap. I want this other thing I'm gonna buy. So I do think there's an element for that for those of us as feelers. But if someone's a researcher, I'm like a little off on a tangent here, but if someone's a researcher, I think just seeing this, just checking yourself if you're on the sales provider side, if you're on the service provider side, and just seeing, am I feeling a reaction here? Am I feeling a need to defend myself, to prove myself? If so, can I just take a breath if I'm on a call? If it's a response, can I just take a breath before I respond so that I can really respond neutrally and see someone is fact finding? How can I respond to this and just answer their questions and really think through the lens of their fact finding, and they're fact finding because they want this information to feel safe to make that decision, right? Especially if it is someone who could, in the shadow side, veer into perfectionism, veer into overthinking. They're not going to feel safe until they have more of that information. So your brain can think, how can I slow down? How can I not get defensive, right? How can I not react? And what is the information I can provide them with that's going to help them to feel safe with this decision, right? I think that can always just be a helpful lens when responding to a question. And just to like know sort of like their thing under the thing here is they're looking for safety. I mean, that's really all of us when we're making that decision, but I think that can be particularly helpful here. It'll cool down your own nervous system, but it'll also help you understand what specifically to speak to again when someone's asking you a question, right? If we'll use this as an example, if someone's a researcher and they're asking me how much money I make, right? It would be very easy for me to get defensive and to be like, oh my God, they're judging me. They want to know if I make more money or don't, like, right? All the noise. I think all of us have been in that place where like that can kick up noise, as opposed to very neutrally seeing like, oh, this kind of has nothing to, like, this is just them fact finding. And how can I also, sure, I can answer this. Let me give them that information. But if me simply telling them how much money I make really going to help them understand why this is a safe decision for them? Like, what are they actually wanting to know here? What is that? What's the fact finding they're trying to find out? And so even with something like that with a researcher, I might answer the question for them, but I might also want to understand what is it about that they want to know? Why is that important to them? Because frankly, how much money I make has zero to do with how great a coach I am, how much I can support someone else to their results. So I might want to do a little fact finding to help them do the sort of fact finding that's going to help them actually get the answers that creates the safety they need, right? And so I might want to know, are you asking that because you are just curious, or you want to see what's possible in your business? Or is it more of like, you're thinking those are going to, like, you want to see what your capacity is, or you want someone who makes more money than you in a coaching container? I don't know, I'm making up possible reasons here. I don't think people ask that question very often, but that is a question just as a random example. And I think just a question where we can answer, but we can also look at how can we be that supportive person who's looking at what are they actually asking here? What do they actually need? The facts, right? What is going to help them create that safety? So hopefully that makes sense there. The other thing there that we can play with, and kind of with that same idea is just seeing for that researcher is, yes, answer someone's questions, right? Like that's what we're there for. And I always think our job on the service provider side is if someone's sort of getting lost in the weeds of almost, they're not in the healthy place of I just need to do my research. They're more in this like I am in the overthinking, I'm in the perfectionism, I'm in the like I'm just gonna research forever and ever and ever because if I know there's no perfect and then I never have to make a decision. I think it's also being that person who can help them see the forest for the trees and help them see when they are maybe looking for things that aren't going to be helpful, useful answers, or where they're maybe looping a little bit more into that perfectionism or getting out of their self-trust to support them back into that self-trust. Jordan says catching the very end, so I'll get to the replay. Nice to see your face here. Nice to have you here, and definitely catch the replay because we still got a little bit left, but the replay will make everything make more sense. So kind of again with that, just helping them see, helping them get clear on it's sort of like solve the right problem, but like answer the right question that's actually going to give them the information they need and that safety they need to be able to make that decision. The other thing I will say with the researcher is just noting this is something that can also show up in someone's partner or their spouse or their parent or the person who is going to be financially supporting part of an investment if it's a larger investment. And so I think it's just helpful to know these things when we're selling, especially high ticket where there might be more than one person who is part of the decision-making process, so that you can understand if you're sort of like, wait, they were a yes on the phone, they were that feeler decision maker, and now there's all these research-based questions. Sometimes we can also see it's because a spouse or someone else is asking, and understanding that can be very useful because then you can also directly respond to the other person or have that conversation there, open that conversation up there, but see you're almost dealing with two different decision-making process, and to allow that spaciousness for both so you can support both through the information they essentially need to be able to make that clear decision. Okay, just seeing here. I'm just looking at the time. I feel like we could just do like a whole masterclass just on all four of these, but I want to go through the other two, so I'll go through the other two. And then if y'all want more on this, if this is like fascinating to you, we can always do another live stream, but just since we've already been chatting for an hour. The third buyer persona or decision-making process here is it's the last minute decision maker. It's the person who really uses FOMO, scarcity, urgency as a deadline as a way to snap into a decision. So it is the person who essentially needs a deadline to be able to make a decision. And this is the person when if you're having a launch, right, you're gonna have that impulsive, that feeler, that person who's based on intuition who buys on day one. You're gonna have the researcher who is researching and like thinking about it and like going over your FAQ, but like they're pretty much confirming their bias and like through that decision-making process through your launch open cart. Then you're gonna have that person who the way they finally snap their brain into the decision-making mode, because our brains don't like making decisions. This is like a fun brain science thing. Your brain is designed to conserve calories because if you were in fight, flight, freeze, right? If you're running away from a tiger, we need those calories to run away and to use the brain for that sort of functioning. That's why we have decision fatigue, right? We also cap out at a certain number of decisions. Decisions use a lot of energy. Our brain really doesn't like making a ton of decisions. It's why we have patterns. It's why we have habits. And so I think just understanding for all of us, this is true. I think it's like 200 decisions a day, but especially big decisions, right? And I think understanding this is very, very important just for how humans function. And certain people, all of us have this. All of us have decision fatigue. All of us suck at making decisions. And that is why things like including urgency or true scarcity, not false scarcity, in your sales process can be very beneficial. And there are buyer personas who will, here I'm going to say literally again, everyone can take a drink, take a shot. Who will wait until it is that final call, last call, right? It is that last deadline, and that is what gets their brain to snap into action, because finally the fear of missing out outweighs the calories they need to conserve in their brain by not making a decision, right? There's finally something here on the line that tells the brain, hey, we need to snap into function because we will actually miss out on something. There's actually something, there's like a consequence now. It's worth using these calories. It's worth making a decision. So I probably giving you way more information than you need, but I think it's helpful to understand sort of the why here, and to see for someone like this, they're someone who is going to need a deadline to make that decision and to kind of snap their brain to the prefrontal cortex to do so. And so I think with this, the pros for this sort of buyer is they usually do know what they want, right? It's just that they're, without a deadline, going to stay in indecision and sort of not trust that decision, or does not really get their brain to snap into the place that has them make that decision and take action on it. But I do think they're probably not going to be back and forth with the research. It's more just I need something that tells my brain it is time to make that decision. And a simple deadline can be enough to help them make that clear decision. The kind of shadow side to this, the con side to this, is if they don't have any urgency, if there's no scarcity, if there's no FOMO, if none of that is happening, they can stay stuck in a decision. They cannot make a decision. They cannot move forward. They can stay stuck in that place for a long time. So I think with something like this is why, or they can also lose sight of what they want sometimes. I think if you're supporting someone with the buying decision who is really kind of in that place where it's like, they just have unless there is that deadline, they have a hard time making a decision. I think this is where simply having a deadline can be really beneficial. I have a client like this who, she knows this about herself. She will give herself a self-imposed deadline where she just knows she needs time to think about things, right? She needs that time, and then without a deadline, she's not going to make a decision. And I would say there's a little bit of the researcher in this, but the big difference is the researcher is more, I am looking for the best option. I need these answers question to create safety. This is a little bit more like, I need to think through this, right? I need that spaciousness. I need that time to think through this, but I also need a deadline because otherwise I will never make a decision. So they're similar, but slightly different there. And so I think for someone like this, can we just simply put in a deadline, real or not? Right? Our brains work really well on deadlines. And if you find this is coming up a lot for people in your sales process, because this is a pretty human thing anyway, you can also look at, how can I incentivize a decision? How can I incentivize a deadline? Right? Maybe you give a bonus if someone makes a decision by a certain timeline. Maybe you give them a discount. Maybe they get a special bonus call or a freebie that you've created, right? But I think there's so many different ways we can incentivize someone to make a decision by a certain deadline. And here's the other thing you can play with is removing that bonus if they haven't made a decision by a certain deadline. Because the thing here that's really coming up for someone where they need that decision, they need that last minute, is they need that last minute, but they also need that last minute because then their brain thinks something is going to go away, right? There's more pain now to not making a decision, and so it's worth using the calories to make the decision. This is all happening subconsciously, right? So I think understanding it's not just that I'm going to give you something, but it's sort of like that thing is going to go away, right? There is pain if you don't make a decision. It is worth making that decision. There is an actual fear of missing out then. And this isn't to be manipulative. It's simply, again, humans suck at making decisions. All of us do. And this buyer persona is just without that deadline, they'll just never make a decision on pretty much anything. So I think that can be just a really helpful way to support someone who is in that part of the sales process. If your sales process doesn't allow for that, you can also simply speak to the deadline, or we could have them give themselves a deadline that they're going to make a decision by, or even speak to what they're going to miss out on if they don't make that decision, right? It could be a spot going away. It could be you're going to support them with a goal that's really important to them that they're not going to have all that support with, right? We could do this from a really lovely place, not from a gross sales place. But I think this is just a conversation that you can have with someone, and just to help them see this is what's happening, this is what's going on, this is why they're really not making a decision, because I think sometimes we don't have that awareness when we're in this buyer persona in that process. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. I thought it's a little dry. Let me know if you have questions about that one though. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. And I'm gonna go to this last one here. So the last type of buyer persona that I think is really prevalent here is, I'm calling them social proofers, for lack of a better way to say this. And again, I'm gonna keep saying this, we all have a little bit of all of these personas, and all of these personas are great to be aware of and to know that are also just, because they're in all of us, helpful to incorporate, to speak to in our marketing, in our sales process. And again, some of us just lean on one of these more than another as a way we make decisions, and that's helpful to notice, especially when it's different from the way you make decisions, so you're not making yourself wrong. And so you can support someone and see that they're a really great client, even if they decide differently than you. But a social proofer creates, and this is not a real term, this is a term I made up, but they create safety around their buying decision by getting the evidence that other people have gone before them and invested in this item or thing very safely and gotten a good result, right? And again, social proof, we know already in marketing and sales, this is a really beneficial thing to have. This is why we want testimonials. This is why we all read reviews, right? This is why Yelp exists. We already know this is how we all make decisions, right? This is a beneficial thing. And I think certain people, their buying persona, their decision-making process leans really heavily on that social proof and of seeing that they feel safe. They feel safe to make a decision. They feel safe to spend money when they have seen, and it makes sense, right? We are tribe people. We create safety by being in a tribe. So when we can see, hey, a bunch of people went before me, and a bunch of people went before me, and they're okay, and they didn't die. A tiger didn't eat them. They are safe. You know what I mean? Like when we can see that, then that makes us feel safer to make a decision to do the same thing. And again, same then. That is maybe the evolutionary brain and kind of what's happening subconsciously. And when we're looking at buying, investing decisions for this person, if they can see, oh, I this is like a silly example, but my cousin turned me on to this like self-tanner lotion, and I'm very pale, and I'm not a big fan of self-tanner because it usually makes you look orange, right? And so with something like that, that is something I'm not thinking about buying, that is not on the market for me. I very much became a social proofer buyer, and that's how I made my buying decision. It wasn't until she first bought it, it's like, more expensive self-tanner. She first used it and didn't turn orange. And then she let me use it for free on me to test it out, right? And see that I didn't turn orange. And then I read some reviews, and then I saw some other people use it and they didn't turn orange. And I was like, okay, there's enough social proof here that I could spend my money on this, and it's safe to spend my money on this, and I'm not gonna look orange, right? This is like the silliest example, but I think it's helpful to see, because here's a silly example, and we can see even with that silly example, I needed that social proof to feel safe enough to spend my money. It wasn't like I couldn't afford it. It wasn't like, all these other reasons. It was simply, that was what I needed to feel safe to buy this selfless like tanner that I'm now obsessed with. So that's an example there. And I think the same thing can happen for all of us in our businesses. Certain people all of us to some degree, but I think certain people's buyer personas, they're really just not going to feel safe. It's not going to feel safe to hand over money until they have a little bit more evidence that someone else has done the same thing and gotten the result, or the scary thing hasn't happened to them, right? We use my coaching, for example. Some people are going to feel a lot safer investing when they see I've been on thousands of coaching calls and my clients have lots of great results. That's going to create some safety to see, oh, other people have invested money here and other people have been safe and they're okay and they've gotten great results. So I think that's really helpful to understand with the social proofer. Again, we all have a little bit of this one. I think this is a very normal human part of the sales process and what drives us to buy and what creates safety there. And some people are just going to have this to a heightened degree. The pro to this buying persona is this person is going to feel a lot of safety through your testimonials or through getting, a free sample or a trial or a test. And I think that's a really beautiful thing because you know exactly the way to solve this. It gets to be really practical. The shadow side to this, I think sometimes this is where we can have someone who is almost giving that decision-making power away, and it's almost like they're judge instead of like the feeler who's all based on intuition. This is maybe almost like there's no intuition here, and this can be really outsourced, and sometimes the decision and trust can be handed off to people outside of themselves. And I think that's just, again, a shadow side here where we can just notice that, and where they could be maybe swayed by popular opinion. And what is it, the thing our parents said growing up, if everyone jumped off of a bridge, would you? And here we want to see that, yeah, social proof can be really powerful, and that can be really helpful, and having that can make someone feel safe to make that decision. And for this person, sharing some testimonials could really just help them make that clear decision. And we want to be mindful, if we are this person, we don't want to be just because everyone jumps off of a bridge doesn't mean that's safe. And just because everyone is buying this thing or doing this thing, that's a great decision, right? That's, we have a bit of herd mentality. And so I think if this is your predominant buyer persona, something just to be mindful of on that shadow side. So you can kind of go back into, what is my intuition telling me? Maybe this is a place you do want to do a little research or to do a little testing. And I think this can also be then when you're on the service provider side, when you're having the sales conversation, again, for the person who's like, they just need a little bit of this to create safety, share those testimonials. Maybe give them a little bit of the research or solution of like maybe a sample or a test. And I think you can also simply be mindful of where do we need to test the yes, the same way we did with the feelers, but just for a very different reason. And here, where do we need to test the yes, where maybe someone is so bought in and sold in on your work because of testimonials, right? Because of that social proof, where maybe it's not actually a fit or the right solution to the problem they have. This is just like I might test the yes for someone who's a super excited feeler decision maker. If I have someone who's really based on social proof, and let's say because I've been around for 6.5 years, they're really bought into me and my work, and that's really the main reason that social proof and other client results, that they're making that decision to possibly work together. This might simply be another place that I'm testing the yes to see, is this actually the right solution, the right best fit for them and the actual problem or challenge they have. I had someone not too long ago, a wonderful human, who booked a sales call with me, and this was they were coming in, they were kind of a yes already from social proof, but it turned out really and truly my work wasn't going to be the right fit for the thing their business really needed, for the solving the right problem. When we had a conversation, we looked at what their challenge point was and what they needed support around. They really needed someone who was going to be on a more technical support side and really had something completely different to offer. And so this was a place where I tested the yes for very different reasons, again, than the feeler on the buyer side. And yes, I guess I tested the yes because it wouldn't have been a right fit from a place of integrity, but I think it was a really important place to do that, because I think, again, that shadow side to this can then sometimes have us have a false yes as opposed to a yes that's really because it's a right fit or a right solution problem fit. So I think, again, kind of if someone's in more of the healthy expression of this and the pro side of this, share the testimonial, share the social proof. I think these are helpful things to do in your marketing anyway. And then if you're finding maybe there's someone here who's more on the shadow side of this, that's where I might test the yes, but for a different reason. All right, I have been super long-winded today. I'm going to share one last 3-second thing here and we will wrap this up. But the last piece I just want to share, because I said we were going to take all of these and then how can you use these in your marketing, your sales. I think just remembering, particularly for those of you who are doing social media marketing, who maybe have a launch coming up, who are having those sales calls, just simply to remember we are going to interact with people who have different buyer personas than us, so not to make that wrong, and to also see how can you start thinking about speaking to each of these personas in your content, in your marketing, in your sales process. If you're having a launch, right, and cart is open for 2 weeks, how can you make sure you're not only speaking to the social proofers or not only speaking to those people who need the deadline and the last minute decision makers, right, who always make a decision at that last minute? How can you make sure you're also speaking to the researchers, or they're also speaking to that feeler intuitive decision maker? How can you speak to each of those people through your launch process so that you're really helping support as many people as possible who are going to be a great fit for your program? Because someone's buyer persona or someone's decision-making process does not mean they're a good or a bad client, that they are or are not a fit. It simply means they have possibly a different way of processing information and making a decision as it relates to your offer. And we just want to be available for that and support as many people with that as possible, because that's how you get lots of beautiful clients. I hope this is helpful for you. Thank you for hanging with me to the end. I know this was a longer one, but I hope this was valuable. And if you have questions, drop them in the comments for me. I'll come back to that. And then a quick heads up, we do have a free masterclass coming at the end of the month, which I will drop a link for. Question all the rules for making money so that you can make bank your way. And if you know me, you know I'm a big believer that there are no rules when it comes to business. It's what we talked about at the beginning of this live stream. If you're a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, you are creative, you are a creative thinker. And the very essence of being a business owner, the very essence of being an entrepreneur is making your own rules, is questioning the rules, questioning everything around us, having new insights, making new connections, solving problems in new ways, coming up with ideas and offers that never existed before, right? That is what innovation is. That is really what I see as the essence of business. And for us to be able to create profitable businesses on our terms, we have to really lean into this part of entrepreneurship. And I think so many people start entrepreneurship from this place with this energy, and then so often learn all the right ways to do business that kind of give them all these rules and shackle them down. And so we're going to spend some time unlearning. I tell a lot of my clients, I'm not here to teach you anything new. I don't have any shiny secrets. I don't have any like shiny strategies you've never heard. So much of the work I do with my clients is to help them unlearn, to get back to trusting themselves, to questioning the rules, to writing their own, to tapping into what they already know to be true. So we're gonna workshop that in this masterclass. We're gonna do a bit of a business rules audit, and I will give you some tools to go through the different parts of your business to question all the rules for making money. I love this topic. It is one of my favorites, so I cannot wait to have you for that. If you sign up, you'll get a bonus playbook that has journaling prompts for what we're diving into that you'll be able to use long after our masterclass. And if you sign up, I'm giving away one free 100K, I think it's, gosh, I don't even remember the name of this, but I think it's our 100K mindset strategy coaching session. As you know, I'm fully booked. I have limited availability that opens up. I definitely do not offer a single coaching session, so this is a great way to win a free coaching session. If you sign up for the masterclass, you'll get one entry, and if you join us live on the masterclass, you'll get another entry. We will pick one winner randomly from all of those names, and we will announce that after the masterclass. So I'll drop a link for that. Question the rules for making money so you can make bank on your terms. That is at the end of the month. And then I love y'all. If you have questions about today's masterclass, again, drop them for me. I always love to hear those from you. Thank you again for sharing my new offer with me and being excited for me. I cannot wait to see who I get to meet in person and get to have that beautiful VIP weekend with. I am beyond excited, and I will be back next week with another topic and conversation for you. Bye, y'all.